On the campaign trail, the Republican pick for VP stops in Arizona.
Now less than 100 days from a great victory for the people of the United States.
Raising the minimum wage. It'll be up to voters.
It's going to have to come from my customers generally to afford it.
Arguments for and against raising the minimum wage and paying for sick time. This is Arizona Week. Hello and thanks for joining us. Republican candidate for Vice President and Indiana Governor Mike Pence visited Arizona this week. His first stop in Tucson at the Fox Theater on Tuesday.
Hello, Arizona!
Nearly 1,000 people packed Tucson's Fox Theater Tuesday to see the Republican candidate for Vice President Mike Pence.
Now less than 100 days from a great victory for the people of the United States when we elect Donald Trump as the next president of the United States of America.
The Indiana governor pushing the campaign's message.
You have nominated a man who never quits, who never backs down. He's a fighter, he's a winner, and up until very recently, it seems like he's been out there doing it all on his own, but now we are united, we are come together, and we are going to make Donald Trump the 45th president of the United States, and we will make America great again.
At town hall, Pence took questions from the audience.
My grandfather owns a small business here in Tucson, and on behalf of him, I'd like to ask, what's the Trump...
That's Joseph Delgado, a student at Flowing Wells High School.
Business growth.
Joseph, thanks a lot. It's a great question.
The teenager asked about his grandfather's small business.
His business means a lot to us as a family. It's how he, of course, brings food on the table for us. So
I love small business. I grew up in a small business family, just like you have.
Joseph's grandmother, Susan, proud but also a bit disappointed with the response.
I don't think he went far enough, but I feel that Donald Trump is probably going to. He wasn't my choice in the primary, but we have to stand behind him now, I believe.
Even if for a brief moment, the man who could be the next vice president made a connection.
And it's still summer around here, so after this, go back to work with Grandpa. Okay.
A conservative Hispanic family voting Republican.
I choose them because, I mean, they're better than Hillary, so anything but Hillary.
My thing is the partial birth abortion. That is a big thing that I'm against. I don't believe in that. So, and also small business. I really do believe that Trump is going to, hopefully help our country.
For volunteer Wendell Holmes, this rally was inspirational.
I got a lot of positive energy when people walk away here and the media or whoever talks about the naysayers and stuff. They can't break up there that there was anything negative here. I think one protester was asked to leave. It was peacefully. It was a positive message. It covered a lot of different topics. I just feel like it's going to get better and better.
And a moment he'll never forget.
He signed my badge there that as a volunteer, and I said thank you, so I had his attention, and he did thank me for coming out and being part of it. He was quite impressed when he kind of looked at it like everybody's handing me shirts or the Pence Trump signs, but out of that, it was like, hey, somebody actually stayed around, somebody volunteered and stepped up, and he thanked me for my service.
Until we elect Donald Trump, the 45th president of the United States of America, you will have done your part to make America great again. Thank you very much, and God bless you. It's wonderful to be in Tucson.
Well, after Tucson, Mike Pence traveled to Phoenix for a rally. Republican National Committeeman in Arizona, Bruce Ash, served as the MC at Tuesday's stop in Tucson. He joins me now with more on that campaign visit. Bruce, thanks for being here.
Thanks. It was fun doing that.
What did you think?
Well, Mike Pence is an old friend. I've known him for over a decade. He's given me a lot of great advice along the way. And it was amazing how open he was to all the folks who were at this event. It was really more of a town hall. He answered lots and lots of questions, a very diverse crowd, young and old, black and white, Hispanic. Everybody was there, very much cheering for him and for Donald Trump. There's a lot of excitement amongst this group. And the good thing is, a Republican organizer, these were people I've never seen before. Lots of new faces and very enthusiastic.
Arizona, pretty early stop on the campaign trail. Why is that, do you think?
Well, Mike said it was because of me. I'm not sure if that's the case. I had written him an email the morning after he gave his speech, and told him how thrilled I was for him and how I look forward to working with him. And a couple days later, I got an email from him and from his campaign saying that they didn't know when, but they would be coming to Tucson as soon as possible. Wow. So it was nice being able to see him again and reconnect. He talked with a group of businessmen here in town before. They had some very, very tough questions for him. He answered them all the same way that he answered each of the questions he got at the town hall. He's a superb guy.
There's been some talk of the politics of Arizona changing, and we may see that in November. What do you think about that?
It's possible, I guess, but Democrats have been talking about that for a long time. There's going to be a very good turnout in this election. I think there's a lot of excitement for Donald Trump. He's connecting. The Democrats are forced to defend the status quo. That's what sunk Republicans in 2008 is having to defend the status quo. Things aren't going so good in this country. Our perception around the world is weak. Our economy is weak. There's lots of problems, that people feel every day sitting around their table at home, discussing how Junior is going to go to college or how Susie is going to afford, the car, once she turns 16. Families are facing a tough time today, and Republicans are talking about solutions, and Democrats are trying to say, oh, everything's great, things are going to be better, don't worry about this guy, Donald Trump, he can't do anything.
Donald Trump has said some things that have made people uncomfortable. Where does the party stand on continuing to support some of the things he said, or just maybe diverting the attention elsewhere?
Yeah, well, I think actually Democrats were pretty successful in diverting, attention over the past week or so since their convention. This con thing came up, and probably Mr. Trump bit down a little too hard on that. The real problem is that the Democrats are trying to hide what's been a very, very unsuccessful foreign policy, a very unsuccessful series of decisions made by Secretary Clinton when she was running the State Department that adversely affect things in Iraq, led to the formation of ISIS, which has now spread through the Middle East into North Africa. We've had repeated problems throughout Europe and the United States and even into Southeast Asia. This is a contagion that has been created by America's failure to lead. The president said it himself, we want to lead from behind. And whenever there's a void in power, somebody's going to come in and take that void. And unfortunately, it's been these groups who have been very, very destructive. Donald Trump is a disruptive political force. And I say that in a most positive sort of a way. If we continue along the lines with this is the new normal, it's only going to get worse. Ronald Reagan in 1980 came to Washington. There was lots and lots of people who said, this guy's a cowboy, we don't want his finger on the bomb, we can't afford to have somebody like this running the United States. Well, Jimmy Carter was defending the status quo. And the status quo, similar in 1980 to 2016, wasn't working so well.
Paul Ingram from the Tucson Sentinel joining me. Thanks so much. Here we are at the Fox.
Yeah, it's a beautiful theater.
They just breaking down after the Mike Pence visit. What were your thoughts covering this event?
Well, it was actually kind of a quiet event in some ways. I mean, we're used to seeing the Trump event that was here just a couple months ago, and it was very raucous. There were lots of protests, and here we had one gentleman who was removed very quickly after he said, "You're not welcome here. You're not my president," and then he got immediately out. But mostly it was just kind of a stump speech, and then had a little bit of a question and answer period. Most of the questions were kind of specific about really specific problems that people had and they wanted an answer to.
So we as members of the press were not permitted to ask any questions.
Right. We were kind of back in our area. Photographers were allowed to go up the balcony, but that was about it. So no, it was very much the constituency or people who were down here got to ask, what, about 8 questions? So yeah, it was a very controlled event where we didn't have access.
Very little controversy at this event. No mention of any of the controversy surrounding Donald Trump or some of the statements he's made recently. But we sort of discussed that the question's pretty fair. Talked about immigration, education, the economy, healthcare. Yet the people who actually asked the questions weren't vetted at any point.
Right, and I mean the first gentleman who came up, I talked to him earlier. He said that this was the question that he wanted to ask, and he really wanted to ask a kind of wonky question about how VA benefits are done, and asked Mike Pence that, and Mike Pence said that they would look into it, and it was something that they would actually fix. It's a complicated kind of financial question, so it's something you'll have to see whether that's something they can actually do or not. Other questions, there was only one question that kind of touched on immigration and border, and Governor Pence basically said that they were going to build a wall. I think he said Trump was very passionate about that, so it was something that they kind of went for. But that was really the only kind of Arizona-specific questions that they had.
Speaking of Arizona, this is a pretty early stop in the campaign. What do you suppose the reason is behind that, for the Trump-Pence team to come to Arizona so quickly after the nomination process?
Well, it may be a way of kind of tamping down the votes that they've got, trying to make sure that Arizona doesn't come into play. But it's hard to tell what their strategy is at this point. I mean, they could be doing something like a 50-state strategy where they really go out, but it looks like they're actually focusing on some very specific states. So Arizona may be a state that they kind of work on early, but that doesn't become important later, or that may change. One thing is the demographics, of course, mean that Arizona could theoretically be put in play, but so they may want to come back again and again. We'll have to see if we ever see these guys again.
You covered the Trump rally here just a few months ago and today's Pence visit. How would you gauge the energy level at these two?
The one of the Trump rally was much more energetic. Part of it, I think, was that there was a protest that was outside, and I think that kind of got everybody's adrenaline going. This rally was, I think, quite a bit different. It had some of the same sort of energy when they talked about Democrats, when they talked about Hillary Clinton. There was kind of a kind of furious energy that built up, but then very subsided after a bit. During the question and answer period was very different. Of course, Trump didn't do a question and answer period. And the biggest difference, though, is that there was only the one protester, where at the Trump rally it was almost continuous throughout the whole thing. So I think then just that sense, the controversy around the event just changed the energy here tonight.
On to different news now, and the fight to increase the minimum wage in Arizona. Come November, it will be up to the voters. Arizonans for Fair Wages and Healthy Families collected 270,000 signatures to get the measure on the ballot. The coalition pushing for two things: higher minimum wage and paid sick days. Here's Tomas Robles, Deputy Campaign Manager for the movement.
We see our families having to struggle to make ends meet. We see our families deciding whether to pay the rent or to pay the light bill, whether to put food on the table or to buy clothes for their kids. And this is happening way too much, and we feel that this initiative speaks to the heart of our communities. 62% of the people affected are people of color, Latino, and 70% of the workers affected are women, head of households, women that take care of our families. And so this initiative hits right home to the people that we identify with, but also that we seek to uplift, to make sure that everyone in Arizona is doing well and has a quality of life.
How do you respond to that it wasn't supposed to be the primary income for a family?
Well, I mean, to that, you go back to President Roosevelt, who created the minimum wage through the New Deal, and that was never, it was meant to be the minimum wage that a person should earn to actually have a sustainable living. And if you look at the purchasing power of minimum wage in the 70s, if you made that same amount of money in terms of purchasing power, the minimum wage now would be over $21 an hour. So what we've seen is this is a way of creating fear amongst people and saying that if you raise wages, businesses will fail or businesses will crumble, when in reality it's the exact opposite. When more people have more money, they have more money in their pockets to spend, they'll spend it out in their communities and money will circulate. And it'll actually drive up the economy. And so what we've seen is that actually small businesses are all about this initiative. We have 110 small businesses that have endorsed the campaign.
There are also those on the other side, though, who are saying this will drive up costs for small businesses, and that, as a result, is passed on to the consumer.
That's a concern we always hear. My first question is, have you been to the grocery store? Have you seen prices rise in the last year? Most cases, it's a yes. Prices go up regardless whether wages go up or not. And what we've seen in the last 50 years is actually profits have gone up for corporations. CEO pay has never been higher, but wages have not kept up with those same rates. And so what we've seen is that no matter what, prices will always go up. It's the cost of inflation. But what we've seen is that the wages haven't gone up for our family members and for our community members, and that has hurt our economy because people can't buy homes, people can't go out and use money because they have no disposable income. And so we see this as a way to uplift small businesses, because the more money people have in their pockets, the more likely they are to spend it and spend it in their small businesses.
Do you anticipate that some businesses might cut back hours or maybe delay hiring people just because economically they can't afford to fill those spots?
People have, and that's another concern, to say there'll be less jobs. But when we look at a state or a city like Seattle, Washington, they did a $15 an hour raise about a few years ago. And the restaurant industry over there actually reported the largest amount of revenue a few months ago. So what we see is that businesses will adjust. This also isn't a $8 to $12 in 1 year type of thing. It's a gradual increase. It goes to $10 in 2017, and $10.50 in 18, 11 and 19, and $12 in 2020. So it's a slow, gradual cost, and it'll also reduce costs in other ways. One of the biggest costs for labor isn't necessarily wages, it's turnover. The more employees you have to hire, or the more trainings you have to do because employees change over, then it costs your business more money, because you have to take time and effort and resources to train those workers. You pay workers a good living wage, you give them earned time, you make them feel like they have pride in their work, they're more likely to stay, and thus reducing labor costs in that way.
Paid time off is also part of this. This is important for you guys because you feel like it has a far-reaching effect throughout a family.
Yes, very much so. Earned sick time is hugely important. We hear so many stories from our family members that they have had to go to work sick or injured because if they miss more than a day or two, they lose their job. And you should never have to choose between the health of you, or a loved one, and your job. You should be able to at least have those days to take off in case emergencies happen. And what we're also very proud of is that in those earned sick days, domestic violence victims are able to use those days if they need to get away from their abuser and find a new place to call home. And so we're very proud of Earned Sick Days because our families need it. That part of the initiative will affect close to 1 million workers.
And the opponents will ask, who picks up the tab? What is your response to them?
We say that the tab will be picked up by all of us. We say that once the economy booms and the economy increases because more people have more money, then we'll see more money circulating in the economy. But when they say a tab, when they say pick up the tab, they try to make it seem as if this is all going to just create this ruckus in the state, and that's the exact opposite. Cost, picking up the tab, all that what that means is you take a little bit from your profits and put it into your employees, and from there you'll see dividends pay off at a much higher return on investment than keeping wages low. We look at good partners like corporations like Costco or like even In-N-Out Burger, who start at very high wages. They seem to be doing pretty well, and I think the more people realize that if you take care of your people, if you take care of your community, the community will take care of you.
Raising the minimum wage and forcing employers to provide paid time off hurts businesses and the consumer. That's according to Garrick Taylor, the Senior Vice President of Government Relations and Communications for the Arizona Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He sat down with Arizona Public Media's Nancy Montoya.
It's a dramatic hike that would be phased in over time. It would affect employers, but more importantly, it would affect employees, people on the first rung of the career ladder, or those that are outside the labor market trying to make their way in, because after all, hiring becomes more expensive. And so employers who are hoping to hire would have to devote resources now to implementing that minimum wage hike. And if you're on the outside of the labor market looking in, this is actually bad news for you. It puts a new burden, a new mandate on employers, and it makes hiring, as I said, more expensive.
Who would it impact the most in terms of the employer? What types of companies would be impacted?
Well, this proposition doesn't discriminate. It affects everyone. Now, the proponents are quick to point out that the Fortune 500 companies can afford it. They point to employers like McDonald's and Walmart. Well, maybe they can afford it. But as I said, this doesn't discriminate. This affects mom and pop just as much as the Fortune 500. So if you are a small business just trying to get your start and maybe hoping one day to be a big business, this is a new burden on your ability to do that. It affects your ability to expand, your ability to grow your payroll. In fact, payroll costs are simply going to go up. You're not going to be adding headcount through this. So it affects everyone, but I think it has a disproportionate effect on our small businesses.
But those in favor of it would say to you, yes, all that is true, but over time that would be absorbed into the economy and that it would actually provide a stimulus, an economic stimulus, over the next several years.
Well, the options that are presented to employers, however, they're not good ones. It includes laying employees off, cutting hours. In some cases, we've heard extreme examples in places like California of even closing. But this idea that a small minimum wage hike is the cure for our ills, well, why stop at 12? How about 15 like in California? Why not 20? This is a dramatic hike. We're talking nearly 50%. Businesses, and especially small businesses we discussed, this is a big impact that can't be easily absorbed. And the idea of, well, let's raise prices to reflect these new increased costs, how does making things more expensive help the very people that the proponents claim to represent? I don't get it.
But wouldn't people who are making more money have more money in their wallets in order to purchase these items?
Well, to earn a paycheck, you have to have a job. And a minimum wage is better than no wage at all. And as I said, these costs that you're putting on employers, it makes it harder for them to hire. So if you are looking to grab that first rung on the career ladder, take that first step on your career path, this minimum wage hike is no friend of yours. It's not helping you.
So your organization is basically saying no pay raises, no hikes. Well, it's bad for business. What are you saying?
Let's see. This is something that's off that the proponents of the measure will often say is that these greedy businessmen, they don't want a minimum wage at all. Let me assure you, the debate over the minimum wage, that ship has sailed. We have a minimum wage. And in fact, in Arizona, we have a minimum wage at a state level that is higher than the federal minimum wage.
But still not able to really live off of. If you work 40 hours a week, the minimum wage in Arizona is still not enough for an average person to live off of, to pay living costs, to pay food, to even a little bit of entertainment here and there.
Well, again, this is the argument from the proponents that this ought to be what they have dubbed, and I've got to give them credit because it sounds great, what they call the living wage. What about the first rung on the career ladder, the entry-level wage? This is for folks who are entering the labor market. Look, I take no joy if there is somebody who is trying to raise a family on the minimum wage and is struggling. That's not something that we cheer. We do have deep concerns, though, on the effect that this will have throughout the labor market, and in fact will end up doing more harm than help to the very people that the proponents claim to want to help.
Is there a tiered way of doing this so that those who are coming into the job market for the first time have a lower wage, and those who have got experience, have been in the job for several years doing the same job, it's tiered at that point? Is that a possibility?
I will tell you, that is something that's a conversation I think we would welcome. We would like to have that. You know, there are folks across the political spectrum who have even advocated a hike in the minimum wage. Even Mitt Romney, hardly a bedwetting liberal, has advocated for a hike in the minimum wage. Barack Obama, not going to be mistaken for anybody at the Heritage Foundation, has advocated a hike in the minimum wage, but up to $10.10. So what we're looking at is much more dramatic than anything that has been debated on the national scale. So as you suggested, maybe we could get a little more creative. We could talk about an entry-level wage or something for somebody with more experience.
Business owners are mixed when it comes to increasing the minimum wage because it impacts their profit margin. It's business as usual at Dee's Island Grill. What began as a food truck business blossomed into this restaurant 3 years ago. One of the few places in southern Arizona that serves authentic Jamaican food.
We never did a lot of advertisement. It's like a lot of word of mouth is what keeps us today in business, because everyone come and love our food.
And we have a special design is whiteboard right here. Thank you.
They bring another friend with them when they're coming back, and they tell their friend, their family, and that's what, so far it's been pretty good.
A family-run business, Duwayn, his wife, and 2 daughters are here 6 days a week.
It's amazing. They're the one that helped me make it possible, because from the food truck, my daughters, they were always there, helping me with the food truck, and since we got the restaurant, they're more involved now. My wife now is involved. So that makes it more family-oriented.
What kind of fish? Is to tilapia.
I think customers love to see that.
Duwayn Hall came to the U.S. in the 90s. Minimum wage then, he says, was just more than $5 an hour. Today, minimum wage in Arizona is $8.05 an hour. Duwayn has 2 employees. He pays them $9.50 an hour.
For the cost of living is, for someone to make $7 an hour, they have to work a lot of hours to get the amount of money that they would be comfortable with. So we try to do our best because we want to keep our employees and want them to come to work, and when they come, they give us their best, not just come and act like they don't want to do it.
If minimum wage goes up, he says, so will the prices.
Thinking on the menu like the taco, $5 and $5 for 3 tacos. And a regular meal is for $10. If we're going to pay $12 an hour, that's more than even 1 plate that we're selling. So we have to times the plates of amount or put the price on it.
Meanwhile, over at Rocco's Little Chicago, employees are paid minimum wage.
Well, I haven't paid minimum wage for over a decade. And from what I've seen, I think it probably can get a little bit higher in this economy, but Tucson's not one of the places that can support a $15 minimum wage. I see no evidence of that. And I think ultimately it'll hurt small and even medium-sized businesses as much as it'll help their employees to afford newer things.
Owner Rocco Digrazia opened this pizzeria 17 years ago.
How was that?
You were the last meal I had before he was born.
Nice.
A bustling business for a Monday afternoon.
Can I grab that plate, man?
If state law changes the way he operates, it'll trickle down to the consumer.
It's going to change my menu prices, and it may change the way the advertising revenues I can spend, and we may have to scramble to be able to meet payroll, which I'm happy to say I haven't had to do too much in the last couple of years, but it certainly won't be pleasant for me. And like I said, it'll be a game changer for a lot of startups and businesses who haven't been around the block as long as myself, and also places that have a couple of employees. That's where your payroll really makes a huge dent in your profit margin.
Rocco says it's a function of the economy.
All right, how's that look, all right? It has to come from somewhere. It's just not burbling out of the ground. It's going to have to come from my customers, generally, to afford it.
Back at Dee's Island Grill, hard work and little pay is part of how Duwayn Hall went from a minimum wage earner to a business owner.
All right, you enjoy, okay? Thank you. All right. In where I grew up, there's no such thing as sleeping in, and opportunity is very limited where we're from. So when we come here and we see the opportunity, we try to take advantage of the opportunity that we come across.
And that's our program. For all of us at Arizona Public Media, I'm Lorraine Rivera. Thanks for joining us.